Web development interviews are hard, not only because it's hard to be good enough to solve questions, to land a job at high-paying companies, but also because it's hard to know how and exactly where to start when there is so much information available. When I started out, I couldn't even solve easy interview questions, but then I realized there are so many topics they could ask. When I prepared only for these topics, I got hired as a senior web developer, and I have helped more than a dozen people do the same. Everything you need to know for a technical web dev interview, I put into one cheat sheet, which we are gonna walk through today. How I usually use this is right before I go into any technical interview is go through all of the pages. As you can see here, there is like just lots and lots of them. And the idea is the same as you cramping all of the knowledge into your brain before you actually go to a technical interview. This is what I usually use for myself and for my paying clients. This will be like straight in the description. It's just so easy to have it in like one simple place and you can just go over all of the major topics. And like here I also like have links. If I don't know a topic well, I can just go ahead and learn it like straight from the documentation. And I believe what I'm doing is called active recalling. But yeah, beginning with the JavaScript core concepts, we're beginning with like the most basic stuff, which is primitives and non-primitives. And usually this is what will be asked the most during interviews. They will start off with easy questions and then ramp up. Moving on to the core JavaScript concepts. A closure is something that I also see asked a lot, like scope, hoisting. This is like something that I get in like 90% of my interviews. Asynchronous JavaScript is also something that you should watch out for, and you should know this really well. Of course, you have here the OOP principles. You have a bit about the JavaScript runtime, and later we will see about Node.js. And here you also have all of the modern features of ES6 and Plus. And again, you can just click here in the links and go to the documentation. Some other important concepts includes like the this keyword, classes, interfaces, function methods. Here I mentioned the methods that I've been asked a lot, but you can also just open the documentation and see all of the other ones. Some functional programming concepts. Here we can also see the web APIs, error handling. This also concludes the JavaScript section. And here we move on to TypeScript, and we have all the fundamental concepts like basic types, type annotations, type interfaces. And here I also put some coding examples. I was thinking of putting some coding examples as well for the JavaScript, but I'm updating this as I go. Enums, again we have classes, access modifiers, abstract classes, and moving to the more intermediate concepts, conditional types, utility types, mapped types, decorators. Basically you have everything. Like you also have like the advanced concepts, so I can just quickly go over these concepts and they will just be in my mind. And then the next section is Frontend, and here I gave React as an example, but essentially I did it because it's now most in demand. But pretty much everything from JavaScript and TypeScript is like in 90% of the interviews, and you can apply even if you don't know React, because React you can just learn it in 1 month or even like 2 weeks. But here I gave like example of what it is, like some of the concepts inside React, and of course the state management. Here I chose Redux, but as of now I feel like I could like use also like Tanstack query, right? So I think Tanstack query is a better option, or like, oh, I have React query here, never mind, the same. Okay, so of course I also have some web development concepts that are basically needed from like security standpoint, from performance optimizations, web accessibility, what are progressive web apps, what is internalization. You know, all of the front-end concepts that you must know in order for you to pass even senior interviews. And here we're moving on to the backend. I gave Node.js as an example, but you can also use Python, etc. But I know Node.js, so this is what I prepare for. And of course, here I have like what it is, and I have all of the important bullet points for Node, right? And here I also have like key features and concepts. Moving on to API definitions and types. This is a more general knowledge, but I believe everyone should know this. Some of the API terminologies, API styles, API authentication, like how can you make documentation. You should know at least one of these. What are the API features that are like the most important? As for like API performance, like how to make your APIs fast and efficient. And this is like usually topics that are asked, like what is caching, what is rate limiting, what is load balancing, what is indexing, like what is actually scaling, you know, and some API gateways that you can use, API integration patterns. I also mentioned here a bit of DevOps, but of course these are like huge topics, right? Docker and Kubernetes are really huge topics, but I believe everyone that's full stack should have the ability for end-to-end integration. Something about the CI/CD and what it is, just to keep this in mind. Have like some additional concepts like server-side rendering, static-side generation. And yeah, this is pretty much the backend section. Now here we have the databases. The general concepts here are sharding and memorization, which is like I think the two biggest topics that I've been asked. I do touch upon SQL and NoSQL. What is SQL? What is NoSQL? The key differences between them. Some of the most asked concepts like indexing, what is ACID, normalization, transactions. And I believe here I cover like most of the questions that I can be asked for databases. And now moving on to algorithms and data structures. Of course, this is like a huge topic, but just to keep this all in mind, because sometimes it happens that I forget like graphs, and here I just like want to remember them, right? And also like for algorithms, the big O notation is something that I've been like asked like frequently, like so frequently. I think this is like a must know. Even more than the algorithms. And moving on to design patterns, I could have put a lot more design patterns here as well, like the dependency injection, for example, but I just like to keep it simple. And usually sometimes people ask you, oh, what design patterns do you know, or like what types of design patterns there are. Like there's 3 types of design patterns, and you can just go off that, right? This is a good overview of design patterns. And moving on to principles, and I believe this is all of the principles that are must know for seniors. So or even like middle or even juniors. I feel like knowing like the solid principles is just like an easy way for you to stand out amongst other juniors. And here I have the dry, the kiss, Yagni, the cap theorem. And like there's some additional concepts for you to know. Here I also touch upon testing, and I could also even mention TDD, which is like test driven. I cannot write development, but yeah, as I said, as I go, I'm updating this. And yeah, also I like to touch upon Git. I could also like mention like trunk development and so on, but I just like to keep it simple. I will update these as I go as well. Here I move on to again DevOps and development, and yeah, I think this is pretty much it. This is my way of actually preparing for interviews, and I found this like a really easy way for you to prepare. And this is how I pretty much landed my senior software engineering job. And I believe this is a really useful resource. Go ahead and check it out in the description. My advice to you is don't make a copy, because I will update this. So just go ahead and grab this, and I believe this will serve you like really well. It for sure it did for me. That's pretty much it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got a lot of value out of this, and I will see you in the next one.